I did it!
He said Wagwan, right? And so I think they were just like, oh, people say this, let's do that. Hey everyone, my name is Jack Wallace. I am a dialect coach here in Hollywood, and today I'm going to be reacting to clips from Moon Knight.
How's the sugar trade going?
Don't even know what this has to do with Egypt, really. It's like, they didn't have that back then, did they? No.
We tend to think of places having an accent, and we can make those places as big as small as possible. An English accent, an American accent, a European accent, or a London accent, then get smaller and smaller and smaller until you get down to individual level, which is called an idiolect. It's kind of like idiosyncrasy. It's how a specific person talks. People realize that not everybody speaks the same, and then they'll say, oh, there's this accent, and then there's this accent too. And so you divide it into two, but it still doesn't really encompass everything. And at the moment, I would say there are kind of three accents that are taught when it comes to London. There is Cockney.
I mean, I never tumbled. I honestly thought you had a headache. What a mug I've grown into.
Which is a very specific area, very specific place. There is Estuary.
We kind of have to look at it holistically, step back for a moment and readjust the balance. It ain't happening, hasn't happened for 30 years, okay?
Which is like Cockney Light. So it's got some features from there and some features from received pronunciation, and it's their love child. And then the third one that is taught a lot nowadays is called MLE, or Multicultural London English.
And these days, you're in the fight for a death against the streaming companies, the platform companies, the content people.
To try and represent all of the diaspora of all the people that live there and the melting pot. What I think has happened here, that it is in that world, but it's much more to do with, I think it's got kind of the Greek Cypriot London features kind of happening in what he's doing.
In there, something wicked.
First thing that probably surprised a lot of people is the placement of this accent is. Sometimes we talk about the resonant spaces that we use when we're talking. And so this one's, it's kind of up here, a bit more nasal than we'd expect it to be.
Well, you look at that. Looks like someone mistook the Great Pyramid of Giza for a rubbish dump.
But I'm not mad at it, because in my profession, I see a lot of people doing an English accent, especially because I live in America. So when they find out that A, I'm from England, and B, I teach dialects, everyone immediately jumps into their version of an English accent.
You making a fool of yourself. Handle your shit, Fabius, please.
No, I can't.
And it's always like, but I have no idea why. But in the same way that when an English person often imitates an American person, we're like, hi, it's suddenly really super nasal. Americans tend to do the opposite and go back here. So the fact that it's like up here sort of range, I don't hate it, but it's a surprise.
You'd go up the old nozzle and all the organs would come out except for the heart.
They go to town with like English slang, and rather than say nose, he's like, up the old nozzle. I'm not sure I've ever heard someone refer to it as a nozzle. I know people do, but it's pretty heavy-handed with its dialect word choice. But that's much more to do with the writing rather than anything else.
All the organs would come out except for the heart.
How come?
Well, because they believed you needed your heart to be judged in the underworld.
So he's talking about the heart, and so the first time he says it,
all the organs would come out except for the heart.
the second time,
They believed you needed your heart to be judged in the underworld.
we're in this interesting ha place,
Except for the heart.
They believed you needed your heart.
not fully all the way to an R like in heart. And again, a reason could be for this is because in an American accent, it has an on it, har, whereas here he's trying not to do the but I think it's got a little bit too forward to heart. But it's like one word in a very small sentence.
They believed you needed your heart to be judged in the underworld.
One thing I'm loving, he talks about the underworld. He's using a fluency strategy that is found everywhere throughout London. Instead of world, he changes that final L to a W, world.
Be judged in the underworld.
What do you mean? I'm at the restaurant for steak. It's steak time.
he's on the phone at the moment talking to the person that he stood up because he missed a couple days of life. He's doing a voice in the accent at the same time. So I like that there's the freedom to play around with that, because sometimes when actors are doing a completely new accent, they try and just talk in the exact same way the whole time. So I like that there's this freedom to it. But again, because we've got this slightly nasal quality to begin with.
I think Friday still comes after Thursday, doesn't it?
And then he's doing a voice on top of that.
For steak, it's steak time.
It sounds a little contrived, but again, I don't hate it.
I think Friday still comes after Thursday, doesn't it?
Some more wonderful fluency strategies happening, like dropping final T's, doesn't it?
Doesn't it?
Also, as he goes from his like, what's happening? Oh no, voice into,
You know what? I'll have a steak, please.
it does drop down into a less kind of nasal resonance to, oh shit, this has just happened. So there's all of the right kind of components happening in order to have a fully fleshed out character. When we're talking just in our accent, we're not really thinking about it. Our mouth is set up in a certain way. Over time, our body figures out like, oh, I make all of these sounds in my life. If I just sit here with my tongue, then I can get to all of them. I don't have to do any extra effort. And so if you're doing a new accent, you have to find that new neutral. When we get to these more emotional scenes, it's more likely that you'll go back to your own neutral rather than the new neutral. And so it's really challenging to do that, but different types of volume. There was whispering, there was talking to himself, there was all different range, and it stayed consistent to the accent that he's doing in all of those.
It's a museum, bruv. It's going to be difficult.
No, obviously. I just mean like anyone dodgy, you know?
Anyone who wants to come in is coming in. It's free.
I think it's probably the closest to what people might expect from this accent, and it might be to do with the speed of the pace that it's happening at.
You're just watching Otter videos again?
They're adorable, mate.
Great, yeah, cool. Listen, man, I need you to keep an eye out.
It's going back to that same new neutral thing. If you talk really fast, then you don't really have an opportunity to reset into your own habits and your own ways.
What you're about to see is going to melt your brain, yeah? Come on. Listen to me. It's like...
Often when we're designing accents for stage and screen, we do certain things to make it more believable to the audience. So when it comes to fluency strategies, like saying footage instead of footage.
Has anyone seen the security footage?
Any of those T's, we're going to just change to a glottal stop. But he literally says security footage. So he does it in the T, a T in security rather than security footage. He does security footage.
Has anyone seen the security footage?
And that's probably closer to real life rather than like the designed life. So that's an interesting choice that they've gone for. And it makes me wonder whether they did have a specific person they were targeting and kind of went from their audio or not.
It's like Area 51, like MI6 bonkers, bro. Yeah?
All right, mate.
Yeah, it's very common for people to kind of slide around into various different accents, whether it suddenly sounds a bit more Australian, New Zealand, South African rather than England. And especially when it comes to London, it's very easy to skew Australian with some of the certain shapes and sounds. And in this one with the bonkers.
MI6 bonkers, bro.
Some dialect coaches, not all, talk about there being long and short vowels in different places. So, for example, in the word long, it's a short vowel. In the word short, it's a long vowel, but it's an O versus an O. And so in bonkers, it's that short O vowel, but it's very easy. If you just hold on a second too long, then it's going to sound to us a bit more like bonkers rather than bonkers. And it's all to do with like a millisecond of length. So yeah, it's very easy to suddenly be like, what's happening?
What are you?
You sure you want to know?
Yes, bloody, yes.
I serve conchu.
It's great having this scene because you really hear all the things that he's having to do this new accent. So he's like, I know you're scared. And then he's like, I know. So there's immediately like the Moon Knight version of him has this gravitas, this depth. It's the way he normally speaks, so he doesn't have to worry about putting anything extra on. So it's like fully resonant. And then he's going back to this one. We really get to hear the contrast between them.
And deliver Khonshu's justice to those who hurt them.
Khonshu?
Yeah.
That's great, because he's in his American accent, he's talking about Khonshu, and then immediately in his Stephen persona, he's like, Khonshu. So we get to hear that R to O shift.
Wagwan! I did it! You got planted! Layla! Did you see that?
He said Wagwan, right? Excellent. So this is back to this MLE, Multicultural London English. A lot of the influence of an MLE accent comes from the Caribbean, but quite a few patois words have made their way into slang in various parts of London. And so I think they were just like, oh, people say this, let's do that. But again, that's much more about the writing rather than necessarily that. I don't think he was like, you know what, I want to say Wagwan here. I see how they made that choice. I'm not sure I would have necessarily made that same choice, but that's probably how that came about.
Look, I'm pretty sure we lost whoever was chasing you. Just drop the act.
No, it's not an act.
Stop with the accent, please.
Yeah, I think in terms of the world of this show and what they're trying to achieve, that he's actually doing a really good job of this accent. And I think it surprised a lot of people because people expect there to be an accent, whereas we've gone for a slightly more out-of-the-box target for this one. But I think he's doing all the things that he needs to hit the target that has been assigned. It helps differentiate the different parts of his character. It gives that impression of kind of a weakness. Just the way that he is very timid, it's very kept in, it's up here, he doesn't want to cause any fuss. It really adds to that part of this character, and it gives a huge contrast when he then flips back into the Khonshu version of Moonlight.
For more videos like this, make sure to check out our Kendo expert reacting to Ghost of Tsushima, or a paleontologist reacting to Horizon Forbidden West.